Hey folks, Tom Coy with yet another episode of Arbor Shield. Today in the studio, I have two of my colleagues from the Arbor Police Department with me, and they are female police officers. What was your first, sorry, what was your first hint, Tom? All right, so we have Treca Zdybek, who currently is working out of the detective unit, and we have Jessica Oliverio, who works with us, as a matter of fact, within the community engagement unit. And I appreciate you both being here today. I know there are some feelings you have going on right now. Just trust me, let me drive the car, so to speak, and we'll get through. All right, so we're going to start off with looking at some interviews we had done over the last month on the streets of Ann Arbor with regard to the community, law enforcement, that kind of thing. And then we'll dialogue about that as a group in the studio. So let's cut to our first film.
What do you think are the most serious crimes that occur in Ann Arbor?
The most serious to me usually involve traffic accidents, people not paying attention, someone getting hurt because of negligence or just bad signage, that kind of thing.
Other people would assume like the drug situation, like marijuana. I don't think it's that serious.
I would say probably assault in physical or sexual form.
I don't know, a lot of people come down here for jobs but don't live here. So a lot of people come in from other places and maybe not know what it's like to be down here. So just start robbing people. Or just for protection, I guess. But everyone here is super nice, so yeah.
All right, so that was our first set of questions. So we talked about crime in Ann Arbor, drugs was commented on, and assault and battery. So what do you want me to call you, ladies, girls? I mean, I don't know what is politically correct these days.
Whatever
Yeah.
works.
Whatever.
As long as you're not swearing at us, we're probably good.
I'm good with that too.
All right, so crime in Ann Arbor. So there, I'll throw this thing out. So I've been here, what, 24 years, and you've got
18.
And you have in law enforcement
12.
12. So a lot of law enforcement experience. So with regard to Ann Arbor, I think we would all agree that there's probably more property crimes than there are personal crimes. That when we say property, stealing of a bicycle versus, like this gentleman said, assault and batteries. However, it's a town of over 100,000 people, so you will have and do have serious crime. And unfortunately, there is a segment of the community that I think would rather not think about or acknowledge that, which I can appreciate, but to be aware of it at least, I think is instrumental. But anyhow, you guys want to comment on?
Well, I think when people aren't aware of it, it's because we've done our job. We've stopped them from seeing what's going on, and we've protected them from having to deal with that reality. We've done our job right there. We've
That's a good
put
point.
a barrier between it.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
There isn't a sense of fear when you're walking in the downtown area that you're going to get assaulted, although we all know that there are assaults or frequent assaults that take place in our bar districts or the student districts. And clearly, there isn't that sense of fear here. People can walk around freely without being worried about crimes against people.
So what if I were to say to you as a devil's advocate, well, the reason that I can walk around downtown without fear of my own personal safety isn't so much the police department, though you may or may not be good folks, but it's just, 99.9% of the people are good people, and there's kind of like a magic thing where we all get along, and that there really isn't, violence or need.
I would say if you will have to tell yourself that, then go ahead and tell yourself that. There's actually truth to it. I mean, I would say probably 90, maybe not 99, but 95% of people are generally good, and the ones that aren't, I think that we're pretty good at our jobs in terms of catching them or at least deterring behavior after it happens. So, I think there's probably truth to that statement. Ann Arbor is an overall safe city, and I do think it's because we do our job well in the end. It's not that crime doesn't occur, but I think we're pretty good at following up and figuring out and then dealing with whatever the problem is.
Yeah, so. I would agree with that. I would agree. Okay, if we're ready for the second segment, Tim, let's cut to that.
Studies indicate that police officers have a high percentage of suicide, substance abuse, and divorce. Why do you believe this is true?
Because it's a very stressful job, and those things go along with stress.
Police officers have to carry a lot of concrete reality that a lot of people don't want to look at. At all times, they probably are looking for danger, lack of safety, and also seeing other people being hurt and making poor decisions and contemplating the reality of the results.
There may be unhealthy cultures also within the law enforcement community itself that attract people that might be more vulnerable to those kinds of things.
Do you believe most police officers are honorable in their duties? Why or why not?
I do. They're providing a service to the community, and they're working a lot of odd hours, and then they are putting their lives on the line too.
Society, it'd be anarchy without the police officers, so everybody should give them a little more credit than what they get.
Would you be willing to work as a police officer? Why or why not?
I definitely would not be willing to work as a police officer just because of all the negative stuff I see. It's not so much the cops being negative, but like that's a lot of negative vibes going at me as a police officer, you know, just the initial bias that some people have. So I'm good on that.
I would definitely actually be interested in working as a police officer because I've always been interested in like the law enforcement. Like I've always watched like Law and Order, CSI and stuff. So I feel like as a police officer I could actually make a difference.
And that's what it's about, making a difference. Boy, remember when we used to say that in the academy? And in those first years, and I know a lot of you are saying, what are they laughing about? What are they doing in there? You get it. All right, so there was a lot that we went over there, so I will try to recap as best we can here. But I really enjoyed the second interview where she talks about that police officers have to deal with concrete realities that most people don't even want to acknowledge exist, but on top of realizing that it's there, we are the ones that deal with it, and that's what we signed up for. So, but let's talk just a couple seconds, if you would, about what she just encapsulated, and that is the things that a police officer does day in and day out in our jobs ultimately affects who we are as people. And I don't think there's any escape from that. I mean, there are certain realities when you wade through evil, touch evil, speak to evil, hear evil, that takes its toll on who you are as a person, and to some extent changes who you are, and hopefully you've got some balance in your life there. But anyhow, so if you guys would talk on that particular subject in any way you want.
I think that there was validity to what, you know, all those people that were interviewed said. Our coping mechanisms, you know, there's the whole alcohol thing and the way that we cope with the stress, and the concrete reality, I think, is very truthful. We see things that other people don't want to see, and yeah, it was our choice, but I don't think that any of us, when we got into this job, realized what that was until you were there, which causes, I think, a hardened sense of self and some cynicism. That, you know, inside jokes that maybe only other law enforcement people get, or we joke at things that others wouldn't.
Right.
So we were talking about that at the station the other day. We were saying that somebody had gone up to one of our co-workers and said, hey, I was watching the news and there was a group of police officers, and somebody had died, and the police officers are over in the corner and they're laughing. And he had to explain to them, you know, that's the way they deal with stuff. They're upset. They just saw something that was gruesome and horrific, and then they're over there laughing because they're coping. That's not them thinking it's funny. They're coping with you know, that's their way of dealing with stuff.
Very much so.
And laughter is a huge remedy to dealing with things like that.
Right. You're absolutely right. And we've all, I mean, I know I have been guilty of that.
Right.
And my wife often admonishes me for not telling her what, and again, I'm not in patrol, but not sharing with her the things that go on from day to day with regard to what we do. And that causes some consternation at times. But my thing is always, I don't want to take what I do for a living into my home, because a lot of it is just dark and dirty and unpleasant and a part of a life that I don't want her or anyone I love exposed to. So, your thoughts on that?
It's kind of hard for me because my husband is a police officer, so we have that in our house all the time. And I think, contrary to belief, that's cathartic for me because I can go home and I can speak to him about things that are going on, or that I'm frustrated with, or happy with, or upset about, and he understands and can provide some insight that maybe if I was married to somebody that wasn't in law enforcement, wouldn't be able to understand. Conversely, there are some things he doesn't want to hear about because he doesn't want to hear about his wife being treated in a certain way either. So I think the barrier comes up in law enforcement, like from my kids. I try to shield my kids from the things that I have to deal with because obviously I think we take our work home with us in multiple ways. So
that might be the difference between female police officers and male police officers. Because I know I talked to my husband about like what I'm doing,
which is healthier.
It is. I mean, I'm not trying to protect him from anything, and I could see you going home and maybe feeling like you don't want to show your wife that side of life to everybody. That's your protection thing. That might be a difference between
male and female.
Yeah, kind of interesting. And I know. Right now, I can sense it. The antennas are coming up. Did they say at some point there's a difference between a male and a female?
Yes, like, there is.
Yes, there is. Outside the physical, yes, there. That's my opinion. So don't crucify me, but that is my opinion. You touched a little bit on it, but there is. And when I first got into police work, I was, I guess, ingrained in that. But there is a tendency towards dealing with what we have to deal with, and the stresses that come with it in unhealthy manners, whether it's alcohol or other situations. But what have you found to be, I guess, therapeutic, if you will, for lack of a better term? Therapeutic for you personally? I mean, we've all been doing this long enough. Therapeutic.
I mean, for me personally, I find exercise to be the most therapeutic. Don't get me wrong, I'll go out and have a beer or two like anybody else, and have dialogue with fellow officers or my friends or my family. But I would say that I look to exercise.
We run together.
Yeah.
Well, that's right.
Every morning.
I forgot about
there.
that. Okay. Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So for me, that's the most. I mean, I think in the beginning, when you're younger and newer to the job, you do things that are more, for lack of a better word, trendy. Like the alcohol, you go out and you drink with your friends, and you build relationships and camaraderie that way. And then as you get older and you mature in your life with family and things like that, you look to other ways of dealing.
That's very
with,
true.
Yeah.
There is that. There is that part of this subculture, if you will, that when you first come aboard, and I think it's gotten better since I first started, but it's still there, that you want to be accepted into this group of individuals because, for one thing, your life may depend on things. But on the other side of the coin, no, it's just, for a lot of people, it's a pseudo family unit. And so, if everybody's going out after work and having a few beers, then you don't want to be a jerk and not be a part of that. So there is that element of it too. But anyhow, so you run, and anything else come to mind?
In terms of stress management?
Well, whatever you find therapeutic and balances your life out,
Being with our families.
Yeah, absolutely, family time.
Okay. And we are going to get to that as soon as we finish the interview thing here. So here's one that is close to my heart, but I'll say it now. There was a gentleman here that mentioned it's an honorable profession, and I can't remember the last time I heard that particular adjective used, especially by the media, for what we do. And like many people, I think I've gone through various stages of emotion, anger, and so forth with regard to the all-out war that's been declared, in my opinion, against a very honorable profession. So on one hand, I've come to the conclusion that what we do day in and day out can't be for this person or that person or this reason, but it has to come, really, in my opinion, it has to come, for me, from within, to do the best I can do because of the honor that this position holds. And so, you know, let people say what they say, and let those who want to make money off saying otherwise in the media have their opinion, but it doesn't affect how we do our job from day to day. If anything, I think in some ways maybe it's strengthened those of us who do the job. The majority of police officers in this country do it in an honorable way, and I think it's kind of made that resolve even more concrete, but that's my 2 cents. So if we wanted to speak briefly with regard to maybe the media and the honor and what you have told yourselves as we've gone through this, over the last 3 years maybe, this obsession that police officers by and large are all, you know, jackbooted thugs who are totally out of control, and not only do they need to be disarmed, but yada, 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 fill in the blanks. And yes, I do get emotional.
I don't know if that's the overall consensus. I just think it's the loudest voice. I mean, I just think that that's what you hear about. We run across people all the time that are grateful for what we do. For every one that tells us that they hate us, there are 10 that say that they love us. So I think you just have to keep that into perspective. I mean, I'm to the point now where I won't watch news because it's a personal decision. It is a personal decision for me to be a police officer. I'm not concerned with what other people think because I know that I'm legitimate in what I do and what I try to do. So you're always going to have negative publicity based on the actions of others. But I just think it's prevalent because it's something to talk about. Or it's rather, I don't know if it's prevalent, but there's a negative connotation because that's what the media likes to sensationalize. But I don't think that that's the majority. I don't think that's the majority. It's just the loudest voice.
I would agree with that. And I do have to comment that I don't think I've ever been thanked for being a police officer more than probably the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, people coming up to me and verbalizing that. So
I think people
and it does make a difference, folks.
I agree with that. I think that just recently, it seems like the past few months, I've been thanked many times for the job that we do.
Yeah.
And it's needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because watching the news and everything else, and that's what makes me feel good is when people come up to me and tell me thank you for my service. It's definitely needed, and I wish people that felt that way, if they felt they wanted to go and tell a police officer thank you, I wish that they would, because it makes us feel a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah, so if you get a chance and you see a police officer out in public, just take a second and thank them for their service. And it does mean a great deal. You may get one of these officers like, oh, no, that's no problem, ma'am. But inside, it makes a huge difference. It really does. So, anyhow. All right, so my last comment with regard to all this, I did appreciate, he wouldn't want to be a cop because of all the negative vibes coming at you every day, and that's a very good way to put it. That's a very good way to put it, my friend. So TV, a lot of people get their perception of what police officers do day in and day out based on TV shows, whatever. Growing up, it was 1 Adam 12. For many of you now, you're leafing through the internet or going through the internet. 1 Adam 12, what is it? But we grew up on that, and that, quite frankly, is what, in a lot of respects, I looked at as the model police officer. But people, by and large, pick up their perceptions about what a police officer is through TV shows. So maybe you could just comment briefly, other than Cops. Now, Cops is the real deal. They're out there filming police officers as they do their job, which is, if you want to see what cops do day in and day out, that's probably your most realistic show. But for the other ones, what are your comments? She's trying to hold a straight face.
I'm just saying, my comment would be, please don't. It's not at all, 23 minutes, commercial-free, solved within an hour.
Right.
No,
so let's comment. We'll stick with this real quick, because you're in the Detective Bureau now.
Yes.
And I was just up there training, but it was interesting. And then somebody referenced CSI over here. And one of the things I ran into, maybe you can identify with, is you get maybe all you have in this crime is a blurry picture of a blob that did this crime. And within 24 hours, they would like based on the blob, the photograph, to have identified who the person is, where they live, are they in jail, and I'm not making fun of the public. I'm just saying it's not realistic. I mean, CSI, yes, I'm sure that they, based on the blob, they could do that, but, so, maybe you could.
Yeah, no, there is no, I can't, there's no
I have one.
fathomable way to make
I have
that
I
happen.
have
We
a
don't have
TV
that
show.
technology.
Yeah, I have a TV show, though.
All right.
I have a TV show. Third Watch. Do you remember Third Watch?
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
guys ever watch
Yeah.
it?
I
That was a
remember
good one.
Yeah.
That was a really good
Okay.
show. That I felt. I mean, you can't capture what we go through, but as far as like pretty close on, I think that one was.
Third Watch.
And then there's Blue Bloods.
Now, I've seen
And
that, Tom
that-
Selleck,
The
right?
Yeah.
Chicago one?
Yeah, and it shows like the family life, I
Okay,
think, and
okay.
concentrates a lot of the family life and how they talk
Okay.
and everything with each other. And I don't know, I think that one's pretty good too.
Third Watch.
Yeah, but
And I assume that's no longer on the air because
no,
it's too
not.
realistic. Of
It's
course.
not.
All right.
So the quick answer to that is everything that we do is based on a response from somebody else. So I've got an image that I need to try to figure out. I have to look in a computer system, or if there is an enhancement program, we have to figure out who can run or who has that. And then, you know, if you've got analysis, you have to wait for the labs. It's a very lengthy process.
Very time-consuming,
Yes,
for
you
sure.
could do one day in an entire year on a TV show. So.
Third Watch, all right.
Third Watch,
Remember
yes.
that. And you're okay, we're going to transition now from the interviews, and we're going to do some Q&A, which I have supplied to myself and my guests prior to the show, even though neither one of them apparently read it, because I had a really funny one about 1/8 of the way down. So we'll
Start
take
with that one.
we'll take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
Sunny but a bit breezy. It's a perfect day for a bike ride. But wait, you forgot something important.
Wearing a helmet is the most important factor to minimize injury and even death if a cyclist is involved in any kind of accident. Although it isn't mandatory, it is highly recommended for every cyclist.
Hi folks, we are back from the break, and we are back in the studio. So we're going to move to some simple Q&A with our guests, who I am very honored that really, I try to be serious. I try to be serious in life, and it doesn't come across. No, but I am very honored that you would both take the time, especially you. She just came from a huge cluster at court she was in, and then she ran here, and it was very ugly. And then Jess came here on her day off to film the show. So thank you to both.
well, thanks for having us. Yes.
Very good. All right, so let's move on. So here we are. What are your biggest challenges with regard to balancing being a law enforcement officer with being a mom?
We were talking about this the other day, and it's mommy guilt. We have mommy guilt.
Okay, I don't know what that means.
We should be there at different times, and sometimes we're not able to. Sometimes we can't take off work. Sometimes we're not there to kiss our babies goodnight. Christmas we miss a lot of times. Thanksgiving, sometimes birthdays, if it's manpower permitting, we can get off or not.
Okay, so where, my thing is where, because this is 2016, so, I mean, you know, back in 1950, you probably would get a lot of pushback, right, from your neighbors and whatever, but today, I'm not a mom, so I don't, you know, I'm saying it from the outside, it seems to me that if you're a stay-at-home mom, you really get some major pushback, you know, from people that are, why aren't you out in the workforce? Why are you staying home with your kids? So when you say mommy guilt, I understand totally what you're saying, but where does the guilt come from?
It's internal. I mean, it's
absolutely.
definitely internal.
Okay,
It's a struggle between, and I think any mother, parent who works experiences that push-pull between, I have an obligation and responsibility here, I have an obligation and responsibility here. I mean, clearly we'd rather be at home with our kids, you know, independently wealthy and doing that kind of stuff, but we're not. And like she said, you get late, you know, you're supposed to be at your kids' play and you're supposed to get off at 4, and you get a late call and you don't have a choice, you have to go. It's a holiday and you're a low man on the totem pole, you have to go to work. So I think that the dynamics of the job are different that way, that we can't control a lot of times the outcome. So it's a struggle when you have to call your kids and say, sorry, I'm not going to make it, you
And
know?
especially this job. I know I've had to watch my kids opening up presents on video before because I didn't get to be there when they were opening up their Christmas presents.
And
so.
I think there's the dynamic difference between male and female in that role is that it's almost like mom is expected to be home to attend those things.
Okay.
Where like maybe it's a little more understandable that dad is still at work. It's not. I get
gotcha.
flack from my kids. You know.
Okay, I was going to ask, that was my next follow-up question
Yeah.
would be, what kind of comments have your kids said to you, and then how do you respond? I mean, obviously they know what you do, but what do you respond to when your kids?
I missed Mother's Day a couple years ago. My kids, because I couldn't get off, and my kids were like, you know, next year are you going to be able to be with us, Mommy? This is really sad. Everybody else's mommy gets to be with, you know, everybody else gets to be with their mommy, and we don't. And I did get home, you know, later on in the afternoon and was able to spend time with them. But yeah, I was crying.
I'll bet. Yeah, I get it.
I think the response is just we try to, I guess, get them to understand that because of our jobs and the things that we're tasked to do, sometimes everybody in the family has to make sacrifices for that. And hopefully it's not going to be an all the time thing, and we try to pick and choose, you know, prioritize the things that we absolutely cannot miss. In lieu of, all right, I'll take the late call here tonight if you'll take it for me tomorrow night because I really have somewhere to be. So I think we probably do a little more explaining and like real talk with our kids about why we're not there.
Good phrase, real talk. I like that. Which is why, what they comment on, which is why I always despised working second shift, because, you know, you go by all these homes at 5, 6 o'clock, and dad's getting home or mom's getting home, or they're both getting home, and they're having dinner or whatever, and you're like, crap, man, you know. Yeah, it's not a. Okay, so same question, but the biggest challenges that come with being a wife and a police officer, and obviously yours situation is different, or obvious reasons, but shoot.
Yeah, my biggest, I think it's the same thing, just missing things, and you know, my husband having to take up the slack with stuff, and I get wife guilt, you know, like I should be. He has to make dinner every night sometimes, and I should be there making dinner, and not, you know, I should be having dinner with my family, and he has to take up the slack with having the family conversations with the kids. Not that he doesn't want to, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we should be there together doing it, and but that's with any working mom. Any working mom, I think, has that same feeling, having to leave the family and go work, and I think it's just part of working.
Right.
And I'm sure dads feel the same way too.
You know, I almost don't have. I'm lucky or fortunate in this situation because my husband understands shift work, and he understands the late call, and it was a learning curve more for him. For me to not have that guilt and to let him be a parent. You know, I think moms try to tend to control how everything goes, and I had to learn that on the days that I have to work, that I'm not going to get home till 8 o'clock at night, he's got this. And it doesn't matter if they eat pizza because that's what he chose, like, you know, relinquishing that control. So I think that was a challenge, is not feeling compelled to be there for every moment and knowing that my spouse can handle it, you know, giving him the credit to handle it. So, and I think we're lucky because, like I said, he understands when things come up. So
that makes sense. So this is a question that we didn't go over, but it just came to mind. So, with regard to your female friends and other women that work in the workforce that aren't police officers, when they initially find out what you do, what is usually their first reaction?
I don't know. You get like an oh, you know. And sometimes people are speechless, and sometimes they're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then it's I sometimes find it difficult to have a commonality with, you know, because it's more of a masculine profession. Sometimes I think people are
usually shocked. Is the thing that I get.
Yeah,
really?
It's really like a
really.
Oh.
Okay, so after the initial shock, their first question or comment, or their first question maybe, is?
You always get that random, like, have you ever shot anyone?
Yeah.
Yes, that happens every week on CSI. No.
The worst one for that was Blacklist. My goodness.
Oh, yeah.
They tore some people up. But anyway.
No.
All right, so did you shoot anybody? Same thing, or?
gosh, I can't even, I don't
Do you have
know.
to fight with people?
Yeah.
You know,
Or how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? That's,
Yeah, it's a good,
yeah.
right there.
How do you
That's
deal
a
with
solid
that?
one. How do you
Yeah.
deal with that?
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Or why did you choose it? You know, that's another.
Well, okay, so what do you say? Why did you choose it?
Because I like the freedom of it. I like being in a car and being able to go. I'm not an inside office desk person. I've very much solidified that. I just like to be
Even though she does a
outside.
great job, Sarge, at the DB,
And
she'd
can you
rather.
No, I like being outside. I like that face-to-face interaction. I like not knowing, you know, I like not having the predictability. There is no predictability in the job, and I enjoy that. So.
Which brings up, I once had a buddy of mine ride with me, and within a half an hour, I said, "Well, what do you think, Don?" And he said, "I don't like this at all because because I don't, you know." He clearly saw that you never know what is going to happen in the next second. You know, we were joking around at break with a crew here, with regard to have you shot anybody. And on a serious note, and I say this very seriously. When people ask me if I shot anybody today, my response is always, not so far, but the day's not over. And I say that very seriously because every police officer knows that, you know, you can be having a cup of coffee with your buddy at 2:30, and at 2:31, you're on a shooting at Briarwood or whatever the case may be. And a lot of people I know right now, I can see it. A lot of people are, oh, please,
Right.
you know, this doesn't happen. That's not. But it is. That is real life. It really is real life.
You're constantly hypervigilant because you never know. You know, you can laugh and joke in the car, but you literally turn the corner and you don't know what you're walking into.
Absolutely.
Or you get sent to something very basic like a noise complaint and it turns into
Yeah.
shots fired. It's just, yeah.
Absolutely. And after all these years, I think we would all agree on that. That is to say, even now, I'm amazed at how quickly things change in the matter of seconds out when you're on the road. It's the nature of what we do.
Yeah.
I completely forgot what we were talking about, but I think you're up to bat about whatever we were talking about.
Moms, no, what
No.
do people say?
What people say.
Oh, I already
answered
did.
it.
Yeah, I
Okay,
answered
you know
it.
what?
We're on
We're
to the
moving
next
on.
one.
Yeah.
We're moving on. Forget that. We touched on that. How do you find that your roles differ from, you know, your male counterparts when you're working the road? Whether it's how people treat you, whether it's whatever. What have you noticed in the back of your mind that you're thinking, you know, I've noticed that people, whatever.
Well, in domestic situations, stuff with kids, I think that we have a crucial role, especially in a scene. Not that we don't with every scene, but you know, those victims want us to. Lots of times, we'll turn towards a female, and it just happens to be how it works out. If you get something with a sexual nature, like somebody wants to talk secretly about a sexual assault, lots of times they'll ask for a female, or they'll feel comfortable speaking to a female.
Yeah.
So
I think you take on, as a female, automatically, I mean, without ever uttering a word, the mom nurture role. And conversely, I think our perspectives are different. Something where I can look at somebody and realize that in a fight, I'm not going to win, so I'm going to talk to them and maybe schmooze them into doing what I want to do, where like I think male counterparts can look at somebody and know what they can take and maybe aren't as apt to draw out a conversation because they know that they can respond, where, you know, we have to really strategize on how we respond to people.
That's a good word.
So,
strategy that you're.
and I think that there's benefits. I have a male partner, so you put the two of us in the car together and we've both got strengths and weaknesses that complement each other. So
yeah,
that's an excellent point, actually. It's a very good point. Okay, what was the catalyst that prompted you to pursue a law enforcement career? Now this, Treca has, I mean, she told me at break what it was, and I'm not minimizing it, because we all have our own thing.
I can finesse it. I wanted to
I think
be
you might for the audience sake, because you know,
I
when
wanted
you
to
say
be initially I wanted to be in the FBI. I liked, I was fascinated by serial killers, like the psychology behind a serial killer. I liked psychology through school, and that's really the direction I wanted to go. I thought for sure I was going to be in the bureau, I was going to be chasing serial killers, and then, you know, college is expensive, so I got a cop job, and I was like, oh, I'll go back and finish that out, and 18 years later, I'm still here, and rather grateful for it, because I don't think I would, now knowing that I'm more of an outside person. I don't think I would like the FBI, you know, I don't want to say administrative, but I don't think I'd like to be profiling, you know, serial killers. I like being interactive with the community. So.
All right, so sticking on this, I can't let her get away, sorry. So Jodie Foster, now I only saw that once because it was so dark, but she struck me as somebody who was rather inept. I mean, that's, and I don't see you that way.
You didn't say what it is. Jodie Foster, tell her.
The movie Silence of the Lambs,
Yeah.
you saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't. Okay. Well, anyhow, all right. So why Jodie Foster though? Because, like I said, she's if I recall, she's a rookie, so she doesn't know what she's doing really, and she's kind of winging it.
It wasn't necessarily her; it was the job. It wasn't her character; it was the job. It was her hunting down this one particular guy who was a sadistic person. Yeah, just like her, just kind of on the go. And I was like, oh, I think I could do that. You know, obviously you're young and you have this perception of it's going to be one person at a time, and now knowing like your caseload is 50 people at a time. It's,
Now, what does it say about me if I really identified with Anthony Hopkins? No, I'm being serious. I thought his role, even though it was repulsive, I found his cunning, you know, his dialogue. He was always extracting information, even though she didn't initially get that.
I think that says you're very clever.
You hear that, honey?
Clever.
No, I'm kidding.
Yes,
all right.
very clever,
All right.
clever, whatever.
So the thing was catalyst to law enforcement. Okay.
I had this conversation with you a while ago. My dad was a police officer, and he always told me if you could find a job that you would go to every day without getting paid, it would be law enforcement. And so that's the big reason why I got to be a police officer. I still believe that every single day. Like, I would come and do this no matter what. I don't think I would do it without getting paid. I would do it for very little money. But yeah, I enjoy my job a lot, and that's why I got into it, was because it's a great job. Yeah. It is.
Most of us have had, I think, most of us had role models, whether it was a neighbor or for me it was an older brother, et cetera, but
or Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster.
No shame in that.
No, absolutely not. But we have a phrase in law enforcement, you know, you get bitten by the bug. That is to say, for me, it was riding with my older brother who worked for Kalamazoo at the time on a midnight shift, and within an hour, it was just, I was like intoxicated with everything that was going on and the environment, and you know, it's good versus evil, and you can call that whatever you want out there, but thank God that we have people that are willing to, you know, deal with the evil. Anyhow, if your daughter or son wanted to go into law enforcement, no, neither one of them have son or daughter that are that old, but I'm just hypothetical. They wanted to go into law enforcement, and they said, Mom, I've made my decision. I'm done with school now. We'll give them a 4-year degree. I'm done with school now. This is something I want to do.
I'd let them.
Notice the pregnant pause.
I'd be fine.
Would you? What would you say? What would you tell them?
I think that maybe people might look at this and say, "Oh, I wouldn't because of what's going on with the media." But I think that always goes full circle. Like this is gonna. People are. It changes. Life changes, and I think people are gonna. The media is gonna start liking law enforcement officers again, and I feel like. Okay, I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid. I'm telling you. I think that this is not how we're going to be the rest of our careers, where people hate us.
I just don't think
it's
as a
going to
society
be like
able to afford it.
Yeah, I think that, and I think I'd be happy if my kids chose a profession that I've enjoyed so much.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so I think outwardly, I would like to think that I would support them in whatever they wanted to do within reason. I think I would have a very candid conversation with them about the struggles. I mean, not even so much media related, but I think that after 25 years in law enforcement, I think you're forever changed. Like, I think that you have scars that will far exceed the time that you spend here. And I think that if you think that you're capable of carrying the responsibility and dealing with whatever your struggles are going to be, you know, it's a lot different at 22 than it is at 32 and 42 with a family and kids and stuff like that. So if you're going into it eyes wide open, I think I would have to support them, although I would have honest conversation about media and things like that, and then the struggles that you ultimately are going to face.
I think you'd be surprised though, your kids probably already know that, because like growing up with you as a mom being a police officer and your dad, I mean, I grew up, my father was a police officer. I already knew that like I was going to miss Christmas. I already knew that kind of stuff, or I would miss Thanksgiving some years, and I knew already what it was going to take to do this job. So your kids
But
probably
see, I don't think you
already
know the emotional. I'm not talking about like the outwardly. You're not going to be here for certain things. I'm talking about like the things that the scenes that you come across that you're never going to forget. I don't think there's a way to prepare anybody for that.
I don't know. I'm
think
not
there's
sure.
honest dialogue.
Yeah,
about that.
I don't know. They might have an idea, especially because you say that you talk about it at home, and sometimes they might hear some of the not so bad things, and they might already have like a pre-thought about what's going to happen.
I don't know, because I don't know about you, but I'm not emotional about work with my kids. When I'm upset about something or angry about something, my kids don't see that side of it. So and they're young still, so I don't, but I don't know. I think just a candid conversation, and I don't think you have a choice. I think you kind of have to support what their decisions are.
All right, so let me throw this out there real quick. And this happens a lot. Just lost my train of thought. It's back on the track. Okay, so with regard to that same conversation, if you only had one sentence, you could speak to them as they pin the badge on that day. One sentence only. The wheels are turning. They're going.
These weren't in the prep cash question.
I know, man, but there's something, because as I talk to my guests, I find these questions, so I'd like to answer it. So,
I don't know.
Pinning the badge on.
Yeah, I don't know if I have necessarily a sentence, but like, honesty, integrity. Remember where you came from.
Those are good. That's very good.
Keep your head low.
There we have it. There we have it. See, that's why I asked you guys, man. All right, so here's one where you look into the camera. One thing that you would like to leave with our audience as if you were speaking to the nation, though we understand this is just CTN in Ann Arbor. But one thing that you would like to share with the audience with regard to where law enforcement finds itself in America, the median law enforcement period, et cetera, but one thing you would like to share.
I'll let you go first.
But you got to look.
About law enforcement?
As if you're speaking to the nation, the audience, the audience out here. One thing that you would like them to remember. Yeah, I know it's a little awkward, but
it is awkward. We're human. We're people. It's not just the uniform that you're seeing. It's a person. We're the friendly person next door, or we're the person you see in the grocery store. And we are really here. When we started our career, we wanted to help people, and that's why we were here.
Yeah, that's good.
Don't prejudge. It's a uniform. It's not who we are. And we've just disclosed we have, spouses and children and lives outside of here. So.
Okay. And our last question. You've been waiting that whole time, just for those words. Tell us a little bit about, and then I will actually share, the closest that you believe you've ever come to dying on the job or using deadly force on the job. Either one.
I was interviewing a victim, and she had just had a neighbor throw rocks at her. The neighbor was highly intoxicated. So as I'm interviewing her, the neighbor came with a butcher knife above his head and was coming at us with it over his head and walking towards us, and I'm yelling at him to stop, and I had my finger on the trigger, and that was the closest I ever came to shooting somebody, and he was, not very far away when he dropped the knife, and it was very close.
Yeah. So he dropped it?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
So mine, when I thought I was going to get shot and when I thought I was going to shoot somebody, were actually the same incident. It was I was working a specialty unit, and there were 3 of us that were looking for somebody. We came across him, stopped the car. We knew that he was known to carry weapons, and when we tried to apprehend him, he took off. I was in foot chase by myself, and I could see him adjusting his right side as he was running, so I had to take a step back and think, okay, he's probably got his gun and he's going to lose it or he's going to pull it out. So I took my gun out and was running after him with my gun, put some distance between the two of us, and just kind of try to plan to see what was going to happen. Ultimately, he crested a hill. I lost sight of him. He banked in between some buildings. Another officer in a patrol car came up, and we were able to get him into custody. And upon backtracking, he had dropped a .38 revolver during the foot chase. So for me, it was one of those moments. It was right after a plainclothes officer had gotten shot in Ohio chasing somebody, and it was one of those moments where watching it play out was almost slow motion, because I had to stop and think, like, I braced myself for, he's gonna shoot me, it's gonna be okay, it's not gonna hurt, you know, how are you gonna respond as you're running after somebody? Right. So it was really my only time where I actually thought, this is it. So.
Yeah. You don't forget them.
No.
Isn't that funny? Because I worked for a small town before I started Ann Arbor, and all my, not all, but the majority of the incidents that I recall with vivid detail come from that little town. Probably because I didn't have any backup. I don't know. But I was always out looking for something. But this is somewhat humorous, and yet it testifies. I think you'll appreciate, because you know the history of myself here. But anyhow. So I'm out on the expressway, because it's like 2, 3 in the morning. You're not going to find anything in a small town. You got to go where the action is. So I went on a small expressway, and I see these 2 cars doing this on the E-way. I'm thinking, this is going to be good. So I light him up, and he stops, and immediately they bail out, and I'm chasing. And I had my weapon out at the time, because it was a stolen car. And so I had my gun out. Well, they jumped over a fence. So I holstered my weapon back up, jumped over the fence, and went for it. My gun's gone. So I did have a backup. So I grabbed that. You get it. So I grabbed my backup, and they disappeared. I didn't find them. Well, now I've got a lost weapon. So I'm working midnight shift, and we spent probably 2 hours. And when I was done, it looked like this. You know, I mean, it simply wasn't there. So now it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm drenched. You know, I don't have my weapon. Of course, you can't leave. And I just run out of answers, and we had pounded everything down. So my chief, being the chief, this is the difference. See, this is why a chief is a chief. Went and got a metal detector, walked 4 or 5 steps. Me.
He was the hero of the day.
And my life was saved. What was interesting about it, and I just remember this, is that when I was chasing these guys, that second car had doubled back around and had stopped on the expressway. And I don't know what their intentions were, but so we made it through. But those are the things that happen. Anything else that you can think of, ladies? Because this is wrapping it up. You've done, see, it's a lot of fun. I do appreciate both being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I usually shake hands with my guests.
Just to see like how cold and sweaty their hands are.
Oh, mine are too. All right, folks. Oh, I almost forgot. Tip of the day. Tip of the day.
Oh,
oh yeah, no.
Don't leave your purse in your car on the passenger seat.
What if
hide it.
Yeah,
what
hide
if
it.
I lock the doors?
Well, still, don't do it.
They're just going to smash your windows out if they want it. So don't make yourself a victim. Hide your personal property.
Tip of the day, man. Okay, folks. Thank you for joining us for this episode. And again, I thank my guests for being here. We will see you the next time on Arbor Shield.